Gnome blessings, fellow Gnomians. Today's episode is one for all of you who feel like you're going through this world quietly. Not because you have nothing to say, maybe you just never feel like you know how to say it, or feel like you can say it, or if you're constantly second guessing everything, or running through situations in your head 100 times before even considering taking that first step. We're talking about believing ourselves, and not in the way of some sort of self help book, but in the way that actually feels in how it feels in a human body. The ache, the hesitation, the longing. Can I go through confidence, not as loudness, not as perfection, but as presence? And it's the sacred act of coming home to yourself, even if your hands are shaking or your voice is soft. Not going to tell you to fake it till you make it, but I will just sit right here with you through the quiet part, the part where you know there's something in you, the part where self doubt lives, but you're not sure how to rise out above it. Going to go through imposter syndrome and the quiet ways we learn to hide, the grief that comes from shrinking into ourselves, and the courage that it takes to believe that you're not here by accident. So, because I don't really think that anyone needs to become someone else just to believe in themselves. Everyone just needs sometimes a little nudge to help remember who they already are. So, let's get into it. We can start with something that doesn't get named out loud too often: self doubt. Not the loud kind, the kind that comes with a dramatic meltdown or some sort of big identity crisis. It's a quieter kind. It's one that lives in the background of your day, the one that tightens in your chest when you're about to speak up or when someone compliments you and you pretty much just instinctively wave it off. It's the part where it feels like second guessing everything is just part of who you are, and hesitation is a natural language to yourself. Self doubt is quiet, but it's heavy. It doesn't shout, it lingers, and it shows up a lot of times in tiny, almost invisible ways. You hold back, over apologize, overthink a text message, shrink just a little bit more throughout a conversation. And when you see others share their ideas and think to yourself, oh, how did they just do that? How did they get that out? And then, have that other whisper that comes in of, oh, maybe I'm not meant for this, or I could never do that. If that feels familiar, you're not broken, you're human. And what's more, you're probably someone who cares deeply about doing things right, about not being a burden, about not getting in the way. And I want to say this clearly to you: you weren't born doubting yourself, you learned to. And most of us learn it slowly over time, from feeling like, the teachers are constantly overlooking you, or maybe a parent who's very well intentioned but didn't really know how to fully make space for all of your emotions, or from the moments where, being too expressive, too honest to yourself feels like they cost you something. And it's definitely not always something that occurs from what others have done. It's something we can all start inside of ourselves, repeating thought patterns over and over until they just become ingrained in us. I'm too much. I'm not enough. I don't know what I'm doing. If I try this, I'm going to fail. And you repeat those enough, and eventually those thoughts don't really feel like thoughts. They feel like a truth. And then one day you wake up and you realize you're constantly asking yourself, am I allowed to be here? Am I allowed to want this? Am I allowed to even believe in myself? This is the ache of self doubt. It's not a personal flaw, it can be a survival response. And imposter syndrome, it's isn't proof that you're not ready, it's proof that you care. It's proof that you're standing near something important and your body wants to protect you from the risk of stepping forward. So if you feel like you're on the edge of something but can't seem to move, it's not necessarily weakness. That's the moment before courage takes root. So I want to ask you something and invite you to pause and really think about it. Where did you first learn that being fully yourself might be too much? Who made you believe that your voice had to be smaller just to be accepted? And when did you begin to equate visibility with danger? The answer is they might not come quickly or at once, but the more you name them, the more you can begin to loosen the grip. You're not weak for doubting yourself. You're someone who has survived by playing things small. But you don't have to stay there, because under all that doubt is still someone who's reaching for more, still listening, still here. So that's where we can begin. And the thing about self doubt is it doesn't always show up as an insecurity. Sometimes it shows up as over preparing, as constantly editing yourself, or turning your volume down in a world that's already maybe talking over you. Sometimes it's smiling when you want to speak, saying maybe later to the things that mattered most, telling yourself, I'll do it when I'm more qualified, even though you already are. We often think hiding looks like disappearing entirely, but more often looks like, just enough visibility to get by without ever really being seen. We hide in compliments that, we don't know how to receive. We hide in messages we don't send, in love we don't express, in dreams we downplay, in truth that we soften just to not make other people feel uncomfortable. And the painful part is most of the time, people don't even know that we're doing it because we're good at hiding. We've made it look normal. We've learned how to shrink in ways that don't draw attention. And that can be exhausting, not just because we're holding back all the time, but because part of us knows deeply that we were never meant to live this small. So, just because before you can reclaim your voice, your worth, your place in the room, you have to name the shape you've bent yourself into just to feel allowed to stay. So, where are you still dimming the light to make other people more comfortable? What version of you has learned to stay hidden, even when it's safe to come forward now? And what's one truth you're afraid to say out loud, not because it's wrong, but because it feels too real? Those can be hard questions that aren't meant to pressure, but are meant to meet yourself. You don't need all the answers right away. And, I don't want to force anyone into visibility, but at least encouraging everyone to start noticing when you are starting to disappear. Because when we hide ourselves long enough, we start to forget that we were ever whole. And wholeness doesn't go away, it just waits. Waits in the moments when you feel that tug to say something honest. It waits when your chest tightens because something wants to rise. It waits when you look at your life and think, there really has to be more to this. And that more, it isn't out there. It's not something you need to achieve. It's you. It's the parts you tucked away when it felt safer not to shine. This isn't about being bold for the sake of boldness. It's not about being loud. It's all about being real, about remembering that your fullness, it isn't a threat. It's a gift, that you don't have to be perfect to be worthy of taking up space. Not just someday, not just when you've earned it, but now. And maybe believing in yourself doesn't begin with confidence. Maybe it begins with honesty, with admitting that, maybe I've been hiding, but I don't want to hide anymore. So far, we've talked about the ache of self-doubt, the ways we've learned to hide ourselves, the invisible weight of always wondering if we're too much, not enough. Let's shift a little towards something deeper. A quiet redefinition of confidence. Because what if confidence isn't what you entirely think it is? It's not the loudest person in the room, not flawless speeches, not standing tall while everyone applauds. That's performance. Confidence, real confidence, a lot of times doesn't look like any of that. It's, a self-return. It looks like being honest enough to say, I don't know, but I'm willing, or showing up to the thing that you almost talked yourself out of, sending that message, saying the words, beginning. confidence isn't something someone else can give you. It's something that you can come back to. Because even if it's buried or bruised, the part of you that wants to believe in yourself, it's still alive. It's still in there. It's the part of you that knows you're capable, even if that voice shakes, or the part that whispers that, this matters when you're about to give up. The part that says you don't have to do it like them, you just have to do it like you. So, what if confidence isn't something you earn, but something you're allowed to remember? Or what would you change if you stopped waiting to feel ready and started trusting that you're already ready enough to begin? And what's one thing that you've been waiting for permission to do that maybe you could just give yourself permission to do today? Confidence is often mistaken for certainty, but you don't need certainty to move forward. You just need willingness. A willingness to try, a willingness to fail, willingness to be seen, imperfect, human, real. Confidence is the act of telling the truth about who you are, even when you're afraid of how it's going to be received. It's choosing not to abandon yourself this time. And that choice, that's a kind of courage that, a lot of people don't understand. But you do. They feel like they don't understand, but just because somewhere in you, you've felt like, I don't know, you've felt what it's like to withhold your light. And it gets tiring to do that. So you have permission from yourself that you're allowed to believe in yourself, not when you're perfect, not when you feel ready, but right now, exactly how you are. That's enough. That's the beginning that you need. So let's bring this closer to the soil for a moment. Because we've talked about the ache of self-doubt, the quiet ways we hide, the slow return to confidence. It isn't just an abstract idea, it's something that we can embody, something that we can live. And for that, we can look to the gnome. Gnomes aren't flashy. They don't give speeches or stand on pedestals. They don't need attention to know that they matter. They live close to the earth. They tend gardens, protect boundaries, watch over the quiet things. They don't try to be seen. They just stay rooted in what they know. And yet, they are everywhere, tucked into corners of yards, nestled among flowers, carved in stone, smiling, holding still, reminding us of something honest and ancient. Gnomes, they can be a symbol of small courage. Not the kind that's loud or performative, but the kind that shows up every day in quiet ways, even when no one's watching. So I want to offer you this. What if your courage doesn't have to look like a breakthrough, but like a seed? What if believing in yourself is more like tending a garden than climbing a mountain? What if your job isn't to prove anything, but to show up gently to the truth that's already yours? The gnome doesn't force anything to grow. It just protects the space where growth can happen. And maybe that's your role too, not to be everything all at once, but to protect the part of you that's still learning to believe. The world often praises the loudest voice in the room, but maybe the real work is being the most present one. You don't have to be confident in the way that the world defines it. You can be confident like a gnome, steady, unshaken, quietly wise, knowing your place without needing permission to occupy it. You belong here on this earth, in your body, in your voice. You don't need to rise above your humanity to believe in yourself. You just need to return to it. Return to the parts of you that were never broken, only buried. Return to the you that is growing slowly, invisibly, beautifully, because maybe the courage to believe in yourself doesn't feel like thunder. Maybe it feels like soil. So if you take nothing else from this episode, let it be this. You're allowed to believe in yourself, not someday, not when you've earned it, not when you feel perfectly ready, but now, as you are, especially now. Believing in yourself, it's not ego, it's not arrogance. It's the simple sacred act of no longer abandoning yourself. It's choosing to stop waiting for someone else to grant you permission. It's choosing to take up your full shape in the world, not just the parts you've made small enough to be accepted. That's not easy. It's vulnerable. It's raw, real. but it's also the beginning of everything. So if you're still figuring it out, if you're still somewhere between hiding and hoping, I want you to know that's holy ground. That's where the gnome within you is still tending something, still guarding the garden of who you really are. And even if no one else sees it yet, even if your belief is still a whisper, that's enough. Let it be enough. Let this be the week you say the thing, do the thing, apply for the thing, rest from the thing, let go of the thing, begin the thing. Not because you're confident, but because you're willing. Because belief isn't about being fearless, it's about choosing not to let fear be the loudest voice anymore. So here's a blessing from my heart to yours. May you speak even when your voice shakes. May you move even when your knees tremble. May you trust the ground beneath your own feet. And may you remember that small things grow deep roots when they are loved. You don't have to become someone else to be worthy of belief. You just have to come home to yourself. So, gnome blessings to every listener who is learning to do that in their own way, in their own time. You're not behind, you're not alone, and you are exactly who you are supposed to be. So, until next time, gnome blessings.